Hello, this is Joseph Holbrook, professor, and our course is Introduction to the Christianity, and we are finishing up our second week, and I was unable to get it into two videos, so I'm going to finish up with this third video, and we're talking about the patristic Christianity and the theology and hermeneutics of Clement of Alexandria and Origen, and their method of allegorical interpretation. So let's jump in. So, where the Hebrew mind saw truth expressed in history, most Greek minds saw it expressed in timeless ideas or abstract ideas. And so Philo of Alexandria, a Jewish philosopher, had shown the way earlier with allegorical biblical interpretation, which allows the biblical exegete to strip away the historical shell of the Bible and uncover its philosophical core. Origen adopted this approach to biblical interpretation and took it a stage further. He drew a somewhat controversial distinction between uneducated Christians who tended to read the Bible literally and historically, and their more sophisticated counterparts who were able to go beneath the outward appearance of the text and discover its deeper spiritual meaning using allegorical methods of interpretation. So, a very important aspect of this for Clement and Origen was the Platonic or Stoic notion of the Logos. That is, they felt this was a critically important concept for a proper understanding of Jesus of Nazareth. They build, of course, on the Gospel of John's declaration that the Word, which in Greek is Logos, became flesh in Jesus of Nazareth. Clement and Origen argued that Jesus of Nazareth was to be understood as the Word incarnate. This allowed them to emphasize that Jesus of Nazareth was the mediator between God and creation. For Clement, the Logos had come to us from heaven in that God had entered into or become attached to human flesh, thus allowing God to become visible and tangible to humanity. And so, even today, the debate continues about the relative merits of the hermeneutical approach of allegory of Clement of Alexandria and Origen. However, what can be said is that their approach seemed to have secured a solid hearing for Christianity in the more intellectually sophisticated quarters of Hellenistic culture, and has given Christian theology the beginnings of a secure intellectual foundation. The author points out that this was an important first step in ensuring that Christianity would be taken seriously by the Hellenistic world of the 3rd century. Now we're going to talk about Christianity in the cities. Early Christianity established itself primarily in cities. It was primarily an urban phenomenon, to the point that the word pagan, Latin paganus, meant country dweller at the time. In English, we might say hillbilly or redneck. In Spanish, you would say campesino. That would be pagan. But the idea of the country people eventually became equal to pagans because it was the people in the country that were the holdouts for paganism. So these are people, rural farmers and agrarian people who retained the older Roman religious beliefs. While in the cities, the empire had adopted Christianity. This is actually very similar to the spread of Pentecostalism today, which has a great appeal to urban migrants who've recently moved into cities and are living on the margins of society. And this is about the time that we first begin to get metropolitan bishops as opposed to regular bishops. Our regular bishop was simply a shepherd over a local congregation or an overseer. But the metropolitan bishop was an overseeing pastor of other congregations, a pastor of pastors. And so the Metropolitan Bishop was responsible for a number of congregations. And this change began pretty much at the same time as the legalization of Christianity, and as it began to take on certain imperial bureaucratic functions and some of the Roman ethos or cultural attitudes, it also took this on in its leadership structures. So the Metropolitan Bishop was a bishop of all the churches in the city. So you would have a bishop of Rome, not just of individual congregations, but the entire city. Oops, I just lost my spot. There we go. The most important of these metropolitan bishops were in Alexandria, Antioch, Constantinople, Jerusalem, and Rome. These four cities were the key bishops of the church of this period. These metropolitan bishops began to wield considerable political power, especially the Bishop of Rome, who was seen as having symbolic authority linked to the imperial authority of the city of Rome itself. And the two intellectual centers of Christianity and the Hellenistic culture were the cities of Alexandria and Antioch. You'll remember Antioch from the Bible, from Acts chapter 13, when Paul and Barnabas were sent out by the prophets and teachers of Antioch. By the 4th century, these two cities were firmly established as the leading intellectual centers of Hellenistic Christianity. Two quite distinct approaches to the Christian faith became associated with each city during the 4th century. One point of difference concerned their preferred ways of interpreting the Bible. Alexandria remained a center where allegorical exegesis was seen as particularly important, having been influenced by Clement of Alexandria and, of course, Origen. Antioch, however, preferred a more literal or historical approach. Also, this is about the same time as the early beginnings of the monastic movement. The term monk or monasticism both come from the Greek word monakos, which means solitary or alone. The origins of the monastic movement are thought to lie in the remote areas of Egypt and parts of eastern Syria, and this was a reaction against the growing urbanization of Christianity. Growing numbers of Christians began to make their homes in these regions in order to get away from the population centers with all the distractions. Anthony of Egypt left his parents' home in 273 to seek out a life of discipline and solitude in the desert. The theme of withdrawal from a sinful and distracting world became central importance to these communities. Hermetic are those who saw monasticism in terms of a solitary ascetic life, such as Anthony. Cenobitic are those who saw monasticism in communal terms, as a common life. The more communal approach began to gain the upper hand in the 5th century. Solitary monks were, which eventually began to be referred to as hermits from Aramaic, faced considerable difficulties. How would they find food? How would they participate in common prayer that was expected of all Christians? One of the important early founders of monasticism was Pachomius. I'm going to go with Pachomius. Pachomius, during the years 320 through 325, of course, that's right around the time that Christianity was able to come out of the closet and become legal under Constantine. His monastery developed an ethos which would become normative in later monasticism. Members of the community agreed to submit themselves to a common life, which was regulated by a rule or a set of guidelines. The physical structure of the monastery played an important role in reinforcing its spiritual values. It was surrounded by a wall, highlighting the idea of separation and withdrawal from the world. This brings us to Augustine of Hippo. St. Augustine was one of the leading figures of the Western Church at this time. He established 2 monasteries in North Africa after the year 400. For Augustine, the common life was now designated by the Latin phrase vita communis, was essential to the realization of the Christian ideal of love. Intellectual study and spiritual reflection were best done together with other believers rather than isolation. The monastery was the basis for the kind of study and reflection that would enrich both personal devotion and the life of the early church. This leads us to the rule of St. Benedict, which was developed by Benedict of Nursia right around 500. He established his monastery at Monte Cassino at some point around 525. The Benedictine community followed a rule which is dominated by the notion of unconditional following of Christ, sustained by regular corporate and private prayer and the reading of Scripture. Monasteries acted as agents of transmission of Christian theology and spirituality following the collapse of the Roman Empire, preparing the way for the theological and spiritual renaissance of the Middle Ages. And here's a picture of the Benedictine monastery at Monte Cassino, being the first Benedictine monastery. Women in the Patristic Church. So we need to revisit this. As we noted earlier, women played an important role in the Apostolic Church, the Apostolic period being that period when the apostles were still living. Yet the churches began to adopt more traditional approaches to headship and hierarchy. In the Greco-Roman world, the ideal woman was portrayed as self-effacing, industrious, loyal. This was a socially constructed image of the Greco-Roman woman. Inevitably, the assimilation of Roman cultural norms led to the exclusion of women from positions of communal and liturgical leadership, even if they may have exercised social and political influence behind the scenes. There were 3 orders of ministry within the early church: bishops, priests, and deacons. Of course, we saw earlier how bishops means overseer, like a household administrator. The deacons were the servants. The presbyteros was the elders. Priests is a word taken over from Roman pagan religion, which had priests, or the early Christianity did not have priests. Although women found themselves rapidly excluded from the role of bishop or priest, they could be deaconesses. The Council of Chalcedon in 451 ruled that women should not be allowed to be ordained as deaconesses until they were 40. This regularization of this ministerial order is generally held to point to its importance in the life of the church at that time. Martyrdom was also a thing, that is, at least before 325, when Christianity became recognized by Constantine. The 2 most celebrated women martyrs of the early church in the West were Perpetua and Felicitas, who were martyred together at Carthage at the beginning of the 3rd century. Perpetua was a Roman noblewoman, and she was also a nursing mother. Felicitas was her pregnant slave. Perpetua had been baptized against the explicit wishes of her father, indicating that she was prepared to break with familial traditions and loyalties on account of her faith. Here's the ruins of the historic city in North Africa of Carthage. This is a city that just wouldn't go away. It was destroyed several times, but I kept coming back. There's also was the cult of Thetla. One of the witnesses to the aspirations of women in the early church is found in the cult of Thecla of Iconium. This is thought to have originated in the late 2nd century and is described in a document known as the Acts of Paul and Thecla. The document describes the noblewoman Thecla, who was a traditional stay-at-home aristocrat. One day she overheard the preaching of the Apostle Paul through an open window. Captivated by what she heard, she left behind her fiancé and her home to go follow Paul and eventually to travel and proclaim the gospel herself. So this is the end of week 2, and we shall continue again next week with further explorations into the early history of Christianity. In the 4th and 5th centuries, we'll look at the creeds, the councils, and the development of a little bit more nuanced theology. Thank you very much for your time. Have a great weekend. TGIF, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.